Hey everybody, welcome back to the Soholux Realty YouTube channel. I'm Davis.
I'm Laythe.
And together we are Soholux Realty and we own 100 plus apartment units together. Today we are going to be talking about how to identify a good seller. You know, you want to buy a property, someone's got to sell it to you. How do you identify the person to do that? So we're going to break it down into basically three buckets. The first one being character traits. You know, the seller's a person, what do they embody? I would basically argue the first point is they're at a different stage in their lives than you are. This could pertain to age. You know, it could be like, hey, it's an old person, they're tired, they don't want to deal with this thing anymore, thus they need to sell it. You know, or it could be, age independent. Hey, I'm just not really focused as much on investments or money making right now. You know, we talked to a gentleman a couple months ago. He was interested in taking art history classes. This is a real story.
After selling, what, $40 million worth of real estate?
He sold a bunch of stuff. He sold like millions of real estate. But the important thing is why did he sell? He wasn't interested in owning apartments anymore. He was like, listen, I think he was in his 50s. I mean, he wasn't crazy old.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, I want to, take some time and travel and take art history classes and learn. The point is the character trait, you're out there like us, you're hungry, you're looking for deals, you're trying to make a return. He's like, the money is worth less to me, the return rather, than the experience that I'm after. I don't know if it's traveling, I don't know if it's classes, whatever, but I would argue that that's the first character trait.
I would say before even going into that, the first description of a great seller is they have to be motivated. So going on kind of what you said, step one is the character trait, like why and what phase what phase are they in their life and what's causing them to want to sell. So going off that point, that gentleman who sold $40 million worth of real estate wanted to travel and see every museum and every chapel, on planet Earth and take art history classes. That's great for him. A lot of sellers are in different boats and, some have more of a distressed motivation than others, but it all starts with, number one, a seller being motivated, and then from there.
So look, to Laythe's point with motivation, again, another character trait, they're motivated, right? There's a spectrum associated with that. You could be motivated in that your interests no longer lie in owning commercial real estate, or like Laythe alluded to, it could be, hey, I got a balloon coming up on this loan that I need to get out of. I'm motivated to sell, and yes, it's going to be particular on the price, but at the end of the day, I need to pay off this loan and move on. I'm motivated to sell. Bring offers to the table.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny when you look back on our past purchases, it's what, two owners?
Yeah.
Two owners, and it's kind of all the same story. They're tired of running their real estate. They're fed up. They've made their money on it, and they're getting to a point in their life where they don't want to deal with the day-to-day headaches. They don't want to deal with someone calling and saying, hey, this toilet stopped up. And granted, a lot of these owners grew up where they did all the work. So it's not like in today's generation where a click of a button, we have a plumber, or we use Google and find a plumber in who knows what city. They grew up with the mentality of, I'm going to put my head down and get to work no matter what time or how old or how painful my back feels. I will be the one there. And that's a common trend out of majority of all the owners, with the exception of one. He really wasn't keen on being at his property. But
I mean, listen, it's just to wrap that up, right? Like Laythe's saying, it's like, look, they're tired of owning the property. Their wants in life do not align with owning commercial real estate anymore. Thus, they will consider selling. I think the second, bucket, if you will, is their view on money. And I know that sounds a bit ambiguous. Basically, what I mean by that is if they're not as keen to what the property's worth, what the pro forma or improved value looks like. They're like, listen, I'm tired. I'm not studying real estate every day. I've owned this thing for a while, or like their interests differ. They don't really care as much anymore. That's going to make the deal terms easier to negotiate because, price is one term, but as you'll find, price is a big term when you're negotiating these deals.
Oh, yeah.
People are focused on the price. So, maybe you're negotiating with a guy, you've done your research, hey, I can afford to pay X, the improved value of the property is Y, makes the deal a good deal, I can do it. If they're gonna, come back and butt heads with you, well, I think the pro forma's this at this, assuming this interest rate in 3 years, they're still in tune, they know what they're talking about. That's gonna make negotiating that deal a lot tougher for you, and it's gonna thin your margins. So, identifying someone that is not as keen to the market at this time, or in other words, they're like, listen. I don't care about making that extra % of return. I want to take my money and do something different. I'll let you worry about that and deal with the headache. Those are the guys that you want to go head to head with because those are where you're going to get ultimately the best deals.
And it's funny you say that because 2022, the majority of the transactions happened because of this. Because guys like ourselves studied the trends, understood what we could achieve in rent. And going back to one of our first purchases, 32 units in Raleigh, I mean, what was the average rent? $700?
Like 600 something.
$600? And I know we're going to get a lot of shame on YouTube for this, but we understood we could charge $1,300, $1,400, if the units are remodeled. And granted, we bought it at a price that, we factored in our remodel costs and, we ran the pro formas and made sure the numbers work. And, lo and behold, we got our average rents of $1,400. And I still will never forget the day we signed the contract, and I know we've told this in previous videos, but he said he didn't think we were serious and said if we bring him $25,000 cash, he would sign the contract. And we went to Town Bank and pulled out $25,000 and brought it directly to the seller. And the seller kind of chuckled, was like, all right, let's do it. And I remember he said to us, he goes, you boys, I'll be at the bank waiting for when the property gets foreclosed on you. And that's something I'll never forget. And granted, I have a great relationship with him still, and he always loves to ask me what we're getting in rents, and he's always shocked about how much we're able to achieve. Which, granted, I still think we're on the lower side. Charging $1,300 to $1,400 for a 2-bed townhome and near downtown Raleigh. But it's always funny when what's the saying? When the student becomes the teacher.
Yeah.
Now he kind of doesn't talk as much now that he's seen a proven track record and what we've done with it. But I still remember the look in his face, and after we handed him $25,000, he signed it, and he just looked at us and smirked and said, I'll be at the bank waiting for when this gets foreclosed.
Yeah, that's a funny story, actually. And I guess the third and final bucket would be, it always helps to have someone who's flexible. Flexibility is huge. So, and I'll just use this as an example. It's the one that jumps to top of mind. But let's just say someone owns a property free and clear, meaning they don't have any mortgage on the property. That gives you the ability to approach the seller and say, hey, listen, maybe, going back to bucket 1 or 2 that I'd referenced, look, maybe you don't want to own real estate anymore, but you also don't want to sacrifice a monthly payment. We always say, which a line I like to use, why make the bank rich when we could just make you richer? Basically, you're saying, hey, you act as the lender in this instance, called seller financing, and instead of the bank collecting the mortgage, the interest, etc., you're actually paying it to the seller for holding the note for you. So the point I'm trying to make is if you have someone that's willing to flex on some deal terms, work with you as a partner, really, to get a deal across the finish line, that always helps. Like I said, maybe it's a free and clear deal. Maybe it's someone that just says, hey, we can do an installment sale where it's, you pay me half here, you pay me the other half in a couple years. It makes things easier for everyone. I don't know. Look for people that are flexible. That'll ultimately help you get better deals.
Yeah, and that all comes down to motivation. The more motivated they are, the more flexible they are on their terms. You know, rarely do we ever submit an offer and get it accepted day one. You know, there's always a little bit back and forth, but definitely having a flexible seller. I know in the most recent deal we're doing, we wanted was a 3-month close, and then we wanted a 4-month close because of the holidays, and they said there's no way in hell you're getting more than 90 days to make it work or walk. But you know, granted, we knew we were capable of making that work, but you know, they could have said 60 days, close in 60 days, or walk, and I think we probably still would have found a way to make it work. But you know, flexibility is a big factor when you buy, you know, your deals.
Yeah, so listen, I think we covered just about everything. We'll wrap this video here. Post down in comments if you have any questions about anything we've covered. You want us to delve into into anything else, we will make a follow-up video on that. Like the video, share it with someone that you feel like could use this content. We'll catch you in the next one.